Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about adverbs of frequency and daily routines. Okay, so why do we need or why do we use adverbs of frequency? We use adverbs of frequency when we talk about our daily routines, when we talk about what we usually do every day. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to use the adverbs and adverbial phrases of frequency with the present simple tense in affirmative, negative, and interrogative sentences. Understand the difference in meaning and usage of adverbs and adverbial phrases of frequency. Answer questions using adverbs and adverbial phrases of frequency in meaningful context. So, why do we use adverbs of frequency? We usually use adverbs of frequency when we talk about our everyday, our daily routine, things that we do every day. Okay, for example, um, I may ask you, what do you usually do every day? So, for example, you'll say, I always brush my teeth after breakfast. Someone else will say, I usually wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. A third one might say, they often study at the library in the afternoon. Or we sometimes have lunch in the cafeteria. Or she hardly ever misses the school bus. Someone else might say he never forgets to do his homework. Or she always listens to music while doing her homework. Or they usually stay up late on school nights. Someone else might say, we usually go to bed around 10:30 p.m. Okay, so we noticed that we use certain words like always, usually, often, sometimes, hardly ever, and never. When do we use them? Okay, we use always when we do the action 100%. Okay, so like for example, I do this action every day. So I say I usually and say the action. For example, I usually eat my breakfast. I do it every day. Okay, what about usually? Usually when we do the action most of the time, like 80%. Okay, often we use it when we do this action about 60 to 70%. Sometimes around 40 to 50%. Hardly ever when we actually don't do the action, like we do it rarely, uh, around 20% of time, and never when we never use it. For example, I never miss my meeting with someone. You can see in the photo a woman. She's playing tennis. Maybe she's a tennis player. Okay. From the timetable, we can see that she plays tennis on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, as the example here, she something plays tennis. So what should we use? Correct. We use always because she always plays tennis. She plays tennis every day. Okay, she always plays tennis. Second example, we can see here students at school cafeteria, I believe. They are having lunch or they eat on Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but they don't eat at school on Saturdays and Sundays. So they eat at school 5 days a week. So it's always or usually correct. She usually eats at school. The third example, we can see here two girls, okay, or a boy and a girl. They are reading a book. They do that on Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. They do that 4 days a week. Okay, so when we want to describe them, They read books. What should we say? They sometimes read books. Correct. Around 50% of the time they read books. We can see this woman that's sitting next to the driver. So she doesn't drive. She doesn't drive. She, when she talk about herself, she can say, I never drive a car. Excellent. Okay, next example. Here we can see 3 dogs. They are enjoying their swimming. They are swimming on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They are swimming all the week. Okay, so we might say we always go swimming. Okay, correct. That's correct. Next example. Here we have a happy family. I believe grandpa and grandma with granddaughter. She visits her grandparents. Yes, exactly. She sometimes visits her grandparents. Okay, so now the adverbs of frequency answers a typical question starting with how often or how frequently. For example, when I asked you, how often do you brush your teeth? You can say, I always brush my teeth if you do that every day. Or when I ask you, how often does your mother cook? You might say, she rarely cooks or she usually cooks. Okay. How often is Claudio late for class? You might say, he is never late for class. Okay. Adverbs of frequency go before all verbs or all main verbs, but after modal verbs or verb to be. For example, she is often late for class. Okay. Another example, they are always late for class. Okay. Or if we have another verb like cook, she usually cooks. They usually cook. Okay. Note number 2, with don't and doesn't, we use the adverb of frequency after these and before the verb. So after the modal verbs and before the main verbs. For example, we don't usually travel. She doesn't usually travel. Okay, it's after don't, after do, the modal verb do, and before the main verb, which is travel. Note 3, the adverb of frequency sometimes, often, usually can go at the beginning of the sentence, or sometimes they are put at the end, not before main verbs. For example, you can say, sometimes we study English, or you can say, we study English sometimes or usually. Okay, now we have more examples about adverbs of frequency. An affirmative case, for example, I always go to school by bus. Here we have always comes before the main verb, which is go. Next example, I don't usually get up at 7. Here we have 2 verbs, modal verb do and the main verb get up. So usually comes after the modal verb and before the main verb. Next example, I sometimes have lunch in a restaurant. Here sometimes comes before the main verb. Next example, I hardly ever have breakfast. I hardly ever have breakfast. So hardly ever comes before the main verb, which is have. Next we have, I always brush my teeth before bed. Always here comes before the main verb, which is brush. It's the main verb and the only verb in the sentence. Okay. Next example, she usually goes to the gym on Mondays. She usually goes to the gym on Mondays. So usually comes before the main verb, which is goes. Okay, now in the negative case, we have some examples here. I never forget to take my vitamins in the morning. She hardly ever cooks dinner at home. We don't usually go to bed after midnight. He doesn't always finish his homework on time. We don't often have breakfast together on weekdays. Okay, so we noticed here that the first two sentences, never and hardly ever, give a negative meaning, okay? And the other three examples, we use a negative form. We don't usually go. We put the adverb of frequency before the main verb, but after the modal verb. So after don't, we don't usually go to bed after midnight. Then the other example, he doesn't always finish his homework on time. And the last one, he don't often have breakfast together on weekdays. Interrogative case, do you always wake up early? Does she usually take the bus to work? Do they often go out for dinner? Do we sometimes have picnics in the park? Does he hardly ever go to the gym? Do we ever go on a vacation during the winter? Okay. Next part, we are going to talk about adverbial phrases of frequency. We use adverbial phrases of frequency when we want to say or to mention how many times or how frequent we do a certain action. For example, you can say, I brush my teeth once a day, or twice a day, or 3 times a day. Okay. So for actions that you do only one time, you use once plus a plus time. Okay. So once a day, once a month, once a week, once a year. Okay. For actions that you use 2 times, you use twice. Twice a day, twice a week, twice a month, twice a year. For actions that you are doing 3 times or more, you use 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week or a month or a year. Okay, for example, I exercise once a day to stay healthy. She brushes her teeth twice a day, in the morning and before bed. They visit their grandparents 3 times a month. We go grocery shopping once a week. He checks his email twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. She waters the plants 3 times a week to keep them healthy. They clean the house once a week, usually on Saturdays. I take the garbage out twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays. We have family dinner together 3 times a week. She goes for a run once a week to stay fit. Now it's time for practice. We will rewrite each sentence with the adverb of frequency in its correct position. For example, I play tennis on Sundays. Now I want to say that I do this often. I will say, I often play tennis on Sundays. First example, we are in contact with my sister. We are in contact with my sister. We want to say that we won't use often. Okay, so how we will do that? Correct. We are often in contact with my sister. Second example, Peter doesn't get up before 7. How we use usually. We want to say that Peter does this usually. Okay, so we have two verbs, modal verb do, and the main verb get up. So how we will say it? Correct. Peter doesn't usually get up before 7. Third example. Our friends must write tests. We want to say that they do this often. How we will do that? Yes, exactly. Our friends must often write tests because often comes after the modal verb must and before the main verb write. Number 4, they go swimming in the lake. We want to say that they go swimming sometimes. So how we will say that? We can say sometimes they go swimming in the lake, or they sometimes go swimming in the lake. Okay. Number 5, the weather is bad in November. We want to use always. Correct. The weather is always bad in November. Number 6, Peggy and Frank are late. We want to use usually. Peggy and Frank are usually late. I have met him before. I have never met him before. John watches TV. John hardly ever watches TV. We will tackle some questions. The first one, does Ali study? Because he always gets bad marks in exams, which means he doesn't study at all. So which one we will use? Usually, sometimes, never, or always. Here we can see that he always gets bad marks in exams, which means that he doesn't study at all. So we cannot use always or usually or sometimes because he always gets bad marks. So he never study. So the answer will be Ali never studies. Okay. Second question. Hamid visits his grandparents 2 a month. 2 twice a month, or 2 once a month, or 2 times a month, or 2 times a month. Of course, it's 2 times. We can say also twice a month. So either we say 2 times a month or twice a month. Number 3, which verb is used in the following sentence? He is a terrible cook. He always burns the food. Okay, here we can say the first sentence, there is verb to be here in the present. So we will exclude past simple and past continuous. Okay, so which one? Is it a present continuous or a present simple? He always burns. Here we have the main verb plus S. This is the present simple tense. Okay, next question. Which adverb of frequency shows an event that happens regularly? Hardly ever, or often, or sometimes, or never. Okay, so an event that happens regularly, it means that it is repeated. So we cannot say never. We cannot say hardly ever. We use often because it's repeated. It happens regularly. Number 5, which word class is used in the following sentence? Salma always feeds the cats in the streets. Salma always feeds the cats in the street. Okay, is it adjective here? Always. Salma always feeds. The word always, is it adverb of manner or adverb of frequency or adjective or verb? Absolutely, it is not a verb. It's not an adjective. It's an adverb of frequency. Correct. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.